Masechet Baba Mesia Daf Ayin Gimel Tenor Banan Hamoli Chavila Makom LeMakom Meso Chaviro VaAmar Lo Tena Li V'Ani Ale Lecha Kederech Shema'alin Lecha Beoto Makom. Baraita teaches if someone is carrying a package of goods, let's say some apples, from one place to another, in the origin place the apples are worth only $50, and these places going to it's worth $100, so he's going to transport it there and sell it for a profit. But then his friend finds him on the way, and he says, hey, why don't you give me these apples right over here, and I will take them to the destination, and I'll sell them, and I'll pay you the higher price of the $100 of what it is there. Is that permitted or not? See, if you consider this a loan, he's borrowing the apples in a place where they're cheaper, and then he takes them, uses it for a while, sells it at that place, gets the $100, uses the $100 in the meantime before he pays it back, and then pays back. So he got something that was cheaper. He's paying back something that was more expensive at a later time. That can be considered interest. So what's the law? The Braita says it depends. Bishut mocher mutar, bishut lokeach asur. It depends who takes responsibility for any accident, damage, a loss on the way. If the seller keeps the responsibility for it, that means the seller is the owner of it, and therefore the friend only acts as an agent, right? So basically the original owner is saying, oh, listen, it's my stuff, I'm responsible, you want to take it, and you go and sell it, and then you'll give me that money. That's fine. That's not a loan. That's asking someone to be an agent for a sale. So then, even if that agent then uses the money for whatever else in the meantime, and then pays it back afterwards, that's fine. However, if the buyer accepts a responsibility for the goods, so then he accepts ownership. That is the same as a loan. A borrower is responsible for everything. And in that case, it's prohibited because he's taking something at a lower price. He's going to sell it, have the money, have use of the money for a certain amount of time, and then pay the money, and the money is worth more than the goods that he got beforehand, and so that would be a loan with interest. Hamolich perot mimakom lemakom meso chavero v'amar lo tenem li v'ani ale lecha perot sheyesh li beoto makom im yesh lo perot beoto makom mutar v'im lav asur. Similar scenario, someone's bringing some fruit from one place to some apples from one place to another, and his friend said, hey, give me why don't you give me these apples over here, and I will give you apples that I have at the destination place. This is different. In the first case he said, I'll pay you cash for it when I sell it, but here he says, I'll give you the same number of, how many, 100 apples you have here? I'll give you 100 apples, but I want them now. I want to eat them now. For whatever reason, I want them here. So it depends. If he has apples in that place, that's permitted, because then he's just making an exchange. And even if the price is lower or higher, doesn't matter. He's giving and getting and giving the same exact thing. But if he does not have it, then it's prohibited, because this would make it equivalent to se'ah b'se'ah. I cannot borrow one se'ah of wheat now and pay you back a se'ah of wheat later on, because the price may go up, and then that will look like interest. It's maybe only avak rebit, but it's still prohibited. So, but that's only if he doesn't have it. If he has it, then he says, basically, I'm taking these apples. I'm giving you the apples I have over there in that place from now. They're basically yours, and so when you get there, you'll collect them. Hachamarin ma'alin b'makom hayoker k'makom hazol ve'enan choshishin. There is an exception to these prohibitions, and that is donkey drivers. They can do whatever they want. They can go to a place where, let's say, apples are expensive, and they say, listen, I'll sell you some apples at a price, the cheaper price from the cheaper place, if you pay up front. So his customers in the expensive place will give him $50, and he'll go to the cheap place, buy apples there, bring them, and then he'll sell them to this guy at the cheaper price, even though in that place they're really worth 100. He'll sell it for 50. Now he's getting paid up front, and he's not delivering the apples until later, so he has free use of that money in the meantime. So this can be considered a loan. He's getting $50 now. He can use it for a while he's traveling, and then he's paying back apples that are worth 100 in that place. But it is permitted for the donkey drivers to do. You don't have to worry. Why? My tama, one of two reasons. Rapapa says he wants to give a good price in this place because he wants to open up gates for him, meaning he wants to get lots of new customers. So he's giving a cheap price, so everybody will know, oh, that donkey driver, he has good price on apples. He's going to develop a business relationship with all of these nice customers, and so it's worth it financially as a business tactic, for a marketing tactic, in order to do this. So he's not doing it to get interest, he's doing it to get customers, so that's okay. The second reason is because when he goes to the sellers of the apples in the cheap place, to the orchard over there, so then he'll say, listen, I already have pre-sales at $50 and I need to make some money. You have to give me a discounted price. You have to give it to me for $45 so that I can make some money. And so since if he has pre-sales, he can get an even better price when he goes himself and buys them. What would be a practical difference between these two reasons? It would be a new merchant, a new donkey driver. So if he's new, he certainly wants to get new customers. Everybody, the customers all have loyal donkey drivers that they use. He wants to undercut them, and so he will want to offer a better price. And so, for sure, that would be allowed if he's new. On the other hand, if he's a new donkey driver, when he goes to the orchard, to the apple seller, and he says, oh, I already have customers again. So who are you? We don't believe you that you have customers already. And so that second reason will not apply to a new merchant. Besura azli arba'a bekafri azan shita. Now we have a story that in Surah, a sa of wheat, 4 sa of wheat went for 1 selah, but in Kafri it was cheaper, and you could get 6 sa of wheat for 1 selah. So Rab made a deal similar to the one we just said with a donkey driver, and so he and Rab furthermore accepted upon himself the anything that happens, or any responsibility for anything that happens on the way. The donkey drivers went and came back, and they gave him not 4, which is the price of 4 se'ah, which he would get in Surah, and also not 6, which is how much he would get in Kafri, but rather in the middle. They got 5 se'ah for that 1 selah. So the question is, Vinishkol Shita, shouldn't Rav get 6, since the donkey drivers went all the way there, where it was 6 per selah, and came all the way back? And furthermore, Rav accepted upon himself the responsibility of anything that happens on the way, so he should be considered the full owner, and the donkey driver just be an agent, and there should be no problem. And we just said that for donkey drivers it's no problem. So the answer is, Adam Chashuv Shaneh, for an important person like Rav, he has to be more careful, because everybody looks at what he does, and even if he does something that looks like interest, so people may assume the worst, so therefore he has to be above suspicion, and that's why he was even more careful than one needs to be. So the halakha that we just said is regarding wheat and produce that is regularly traded. There's a regular market price in different places. But Rabbi Yochanan, what about if it's like metal scraps, where these are not normally bought and sold? Could you do also a similar deal like this, that, hey, I'll pay you now for the metal scraps to go to a different city and buy them for cheaper and bring them here? Would that be permitted? And we see that Rabbi Ishmael, son of Rabbi Yoseh, wanted to do a deal like this with linen garments, which also are not regularly traded. People would make their own linen garments at home and would just keep them. It wasn't like you had a linen garment regular market. And so Rabbi did not permit him to do so. Or another version is that he wanted to do it with metal scraps, and Rabbi Ishmael said, no, you cannot do so. So we see that this halacha is only in produce and things that there's a regular market price, so you can say the market price is this here, that there, and then that way for the cheaper price that the donkey driver is selling it in the higher place, he can go back and get even a better price from the merchant because he says I have pre-sales, and everybody knows that yes, there is a market price there and the market price here, and so he can use that difference and use those pre-sales to get an even cheaper price. That makes sense if there are fixed prices, but if it's something that is not traded regular and there aren't fixed prices, then those reasons for leniency do not apply, and that's why these rabbis said it's prohibited. Pardesa, Rav Asad Ushmuel Share. If someone buys the produce of an orchard in advance for a cheaper price, right? I'll pay you now, even before the produce is ready, and then I'll take the produce later when the price is higher. So Rav says it's no good. Shmuel says it's okay. Why? Rav Asad kevan de lekame shavya tefe mitchaze ki agar netar le. Rav says simple. You're paying a lower price now. In the future, it's going to be worth more. So you're giving the guy a little bit, some money now, and then he's going to pay you back more later. That looks like a loan with interest, not allowed. Shmuel says it's okay because there is some risk that the produce may go bad. So actually, the buyer is prepaying to accept all the risk, right? I'm giving you a fixed price now, so the farmer is happy to get a fixed price now, even though he may gain less. He also will certainly not lose the entire amount or any part of it. So he knows he's guaranteed a price, and therefore it's not considered interest since there is a chance not only for gain but also for loss. Amar Rav Shimi bar Chiya modeh Rav betored nafish pisedayu. Rav Shimi bar Chiya says that Rav would agree with Shmuel that you can do a similar arrangement with oxen, right? I will buy oxen that are going to grow. You're raising oxen and you're fattening them up and getting new oxen. So I'll pay you now for the future price, which probably will go up. But oxen, sometimes it doesn't work out well, sometimes many die. So because this is a risky investment, so Rav would agree that you can prepay at a lower price and get the profit later on, because it's also very likely that there may be loss. Amar lehu Shmuel anhush de shabshe shibsha hafochu bar'a ki hechi de kaneh lechu gufa de'ar'a ve'ila havya lechu kalva'a ve'asur. Now, someone who pre-buys branches from grapevines. Now, this is unlike the oxen. This is a pretty low risk thing. When the vines grow, they prune some of them that aren't growing well, and then those branches you can use as firewood, whatever. So you're for sure going to be pruning some. So he wants to pre-buy them at a lower price for later. So this is a problem because this is like a loan. I'm paying you $1,000 now, and then I'm getting, which is less than what they will be worth, and I'm getting these vines later on that are worth more. So Shemuel would tell the people that do this, you know what? Take a shovel and turn over the land so that you can be a partner with the owner of the grapevines. And then once you're a partner, okay, he takes some, you take some, you're actively part of it by just, turning over a little bit of land. Because if you don't do that, then it's a loan. And if it's a loan, it's prohibited. So you have to do something to make it into a partnership. Amar lehu Rav anhu de menatere bageh. Poku hafochu bebedare ki hechi de la tishtalem sechirut tidchu ad hahishata. תסחירות אינה משתלמת אלא בסוף, והיא שעתה או זולה דקה מוזלה גבייכו. A similar strategy was used in the case of the people who guard a field. They sit there in the field and they guard it while it's growing until it's cut down, until it's harvested. However, they don't get paid yet because the owner of the field, he doesn't have any income yet until they process the grain and can sell it. So even though their guarding duty stops once the grain is harvested, they're not going to get paid till later, which is a kind of loan, because the owner of the field owes them, right, whatever, $10,000 for guarding for the season, and they should get paid at the end of the harvest. And now they're only going to get paid some weeks later when the grain is ready. So Rava told them, go and take a shovel and turn over some of the crops on the threshing floor while they're being processed, and help out in that process, so that you are also continuing your work. You're continuing your employment and doing some work even in the processing. You're part of that, not just guarding. You didn't finish your work yet, so that the wages for your hire will not be payable until that time, until later, because sichirut, if you're being hired out, are only paid at the end. And so even though you finished guarding, do even a little bit of work during the threshing time, so that you will get paid then at the end of the threshing time, and it will not be considered that you're getting paid later, and you're getting paid more for getting later. The owner would give them crops at a good price, at a reduced price, at the end, since they had to wait so long. But that's a problem, because they're getting produce that really is worth more later on, so it's really worth more than he should pay them because they waited so long. Therefore, continue your employment by doing something even during the processing. Amar leRabanan leRava, kach ilmod rebit dekula amar shekli arba'a u'mesaleki leharisa benisan mor natar lehu ad iyad v'shakel shita. So the rabbis told Rava, you are consuming interest. Why? What did Rava do? Obviously, he didn't really charge interest, but rather Rava owned some fields and he had sharecroppers. So the sharecroppers so most people would do it as follows. The sharecropper would pay 4 kor as payment to the owner of the field, and the owner of the field would kick out the sharecroppers in Nisan, even though it's not fully harvested in Nisan. So the owner would say, okay, you got enough, right? You got whatever you got. You pay me 4 kor, and now the owner says, I'll take over from here, and they would kick out the sharecroppers. That's what most people did. However, Rava, he would not kick out the sharecroppers until Iyar, later in the season, and he would take 6 kor. So it looks like he's getting more money for allowing them to pay later. Usually the sharecroppers pay their rent in Nisan, and it's only 4 kor for the rent. He allows them to pay a month later, but they have to pay 6 kor. So that is adding. That's interest. They're paying more for the benefit of paying later. Rava says, no, I'm doing the right way. You're the one that are doing it the wrong way. Why? Because the land keeps producing more. The longer the sharecroppers stay, the more that they can harvest and prepare and manufacture, and the more that they make. So ad'a le'aris mishtabed. Iyatun mesaliki tu lehu benisan, mafsid tu lehu bechama. Ana natarna lehu adiyad umarvachna lehu bechama. Really, the sharecropper deserves to have the land. The land is lien to him for the time for the season. Now, you kick them out early, and therefore they cannot take as much from the land, and therefore they pay you only 4 because you're kicking them out early. You're the ones that are giving them a raw deal because you want to make more. You want to kick them out early so that you can go and harvest more after they're out. I wait until Iyad so that they can fully profit from all their profit, and they actually make more. Even though it's true they're paying more, they're paying 6 instead of 4, but they're producing maybe even 4, 5, 6 more kor by staying longer. And so I'm doing the right thing by them. You're the ones that are cheating them by kicking them out early. Rav Mari bar Rachel. This Rav Mari is named after he's called the daughter of Rachel. He's named with his mother, not his father. Apparently there was something wrong with his father. His father was not Jewish and then converted. So he's known as the son of Rachel. Anyway, Mishken lehahu nochri beta. He lent money to a non-Jew, and the non-Jew gave Rav Mari a house as a mortgage, right? Rav Mari is holding on to that house. using that house until the non-Jew pays back the loan. Hadar zabena lerava. But then that non-Jew, in the meantime, sold the house to Rava. So Rava is the proper owner of the house, even though Rav Mari is currently in possession of the house until the non-Jew pays back the loan. So Rav Mari waited 12 months, did not pay rent for 12 months. After 12 months, he took rent for the following year and gave it to Rava, because he knows that the non-Jew sold it to Rava. He's living in the house, so he's paying rent to Rava. And Rav Mari explains himself. The fact that I did not pay rent for the first year, I did not bring any rent until now, is because if an unspecified mortgage, and this was unspecified, how long it would be, is for 1 year. That means that's the minimum. If the non-Jew wanted to pay back and evict me, he would not be able to for 1 year. I have a right to stay. So from the time I made the loan, I already have a right to stay in this house for 1 year. Therefore, the first year, I did not have to pay you rent. However, now, anytime he pays back the loan, he will take back the house, meaning I will be evicted from the house. So I don't necessarily have a right to stay here anymore from this year on. And therefore, I owe you rent. And so here I am paying the rent because I am living in the house. It's your house. And then I have a right to live here and keep it until he pays back the loan. But in the meantime, I want to pay you rent. Amar le, Rava said back to him, Rava said, if I had known it was mortgaged to you, I wouldn't have purchased it. I would have offered it to you first. I mean, he told me it was mortgaged to someone, obviously, because it's not in his hands. But I didn't know it was you. Maybe I thought it was a non-Jew. I would have given you the first right to buy it. In any case, sorry about that. In any case, hashta kedinehem abdinan lach. Now, the least I can do to make it up to you is, I'm not going to follow the Jewish law when it comes to this, because yes, according to Jewish law, you would have to pay rent from the second year on. But, you know what? Let's follow non-Jewish law, which is beneficial to you, Rav Mari. In non-Jewish law, as long as the borrower does not pay back the loan, he does not have to, the owner, the lender who's sitting in the house does not have to pay rent. That's their law. Jewish law says after the first year, the lender has to pay rent for it, but we're going to follow non-Jewish law. So since, and I should have offered it to you in the first place for you to be the buyer, but I didn't realize it was you. So you know what? I'm going to follow their law, and I will not charge you rent until he pays you back the loan, and then after that, if you still want to stay in it, then you can start paying rent. Amar le Rava mi barnish le Rav Asher chazeh mor Rabbanan dekach li ribita deyahibi zuzeh chamra betishre umabhari la betebet. So Rava from Barnish told Rav Asher, look at these sages, they take interest. What do? They buy money, they give money to wine sellers in Tishrei for the right to come back in Tevet and choose whichever wine they want. Now, when they come back in Tevet, then they look, let's see, which one is good, which ones went bad, turned to vinegar, which ones are good quality, and they pick the good ones. So they're prepaying, and they're getting a benefit, an extra benefit, that they can choose the good wines. So that seems like interest. Not only are they getting the value of what they paid, which is the wine, but they're getting an extra benefit, and that should be considered interest. So Rav Asher, you should do something about this. Amar le'inu name achamra kayahabi, achala la kayahabi. Meikara dechamra chamra, dechala chala. Hahi shata hu deka mabhari. And Rav Asher says it's okay what they do. Because when they paid for wine. They didn't pay for vinegar. And therefore, whatever is wine from the outset is wine now. Whatever was vinegar at the outset is vinegar now. And now they're coming back and just selecting that which already was wine. In other words, it's not that they're all the same now. And then who knows what's going to happen. So now they get the benefit. They paid for wine. They deserve to get wine. And the ones that turned into vinegar, that means there was something wrong with them already in Tishrei. Just they were sealed up in bottles, and either they were already vinegar there then, or they just weren't, it wasn't the right conditions there, and they were bound to turn into vinegar. And therefore they have a right, they paid for wine, they have a right to get wine, and even if they took it back then and they end up, and being vinegar, they'd return it and say, hey, give me wine. So it's okay, they're not getting any benefit for paying early. Ravina havayaheb zuzel libne akra deshan vata v'shavchi letefe kufita. So Ravina would pay money in advance to these people in the fortress, and near the river Shanvata. And then he paid early in the season. Then he came back late. He would come back later when the wine was ready and collect the wine. And when he came to collect the wine, they would pour him, these people in the fortress, would pour him an extra jug of wine as a thank you gift. And so the Ravina came to Rav Asher and says, is this allowed? Am I allowed to receive this extra jug, or should I consider that interest because I paid early? Amale mishare, amale in acholehu dekama haligabach. And Rav Asher says, yes, it's permitted because they forego the payment of this. They forego the extra wine to you. It's a gift; they don't have to give it. You didn't say, "I'll pay you early," only if you give me an extra jug of wine. They want to have a good relationship with you. They want you to come back next year, and so they're allowed to give you a gift. It's okay; you can accept it. Ravina has a follow-up question. The problem is that this land does not belong to these people. They simply paid the tax. There was for the owners. There were owners of this fortress. They did not pay the tax to the government. So the government seizes the land and gives it to someone else who will pay taxes. Anybody want to pay the property tax on this land? So these people said, we'll pay the property tax, and the government gives them the right to farm the land for the season. So it says, listen, the land is not theirs. Maybe they don't even have a right they have a right to do usual business, but maybe it's not theirs to give away an extra jug of wine. So maybe I cannot accept it because it doesn't belong to them. And Rav Asher said it's also permitted because they didn't pay the tax. The land is now lien to the king, so that he can collect the taxes. And the king says, whoever pays the tax can consume the land. For that season, they are the owners. They can do whatever they want with the land. And so, if they want to give away an extra jug of wine, it's totally fine. Another question along similar lines of paying tax for others. Rav Papa tells Rava, look at these rabbis who they pay the tax on behalf of other people. There's people who either can't or didn't pay their tax, and these rabbis come and pay the government the tax on their behalf. And by doing that, they now acquire not just the land, the field, but even the people. They make the people work extra hard. Is that permitted? Number one, it could be interest. Number two, it's just, they're working them harder than they would work themselves on their own land. So Rava says, it's a good thing you asked me now because I know a tradition about this, and had I died, you never would have known it. I never taught this to anybody. It would have been lost. So it's a good thing you're asking me while I'm alive. Hachi amar Rav Sheshet, mohar kaihu dehaned betafsa de malka manach, umalka amar man de la yahib karga lish ta'abid, man leman de yahib karga. So Rav Sheshet said that a document of servitude of these people is in the treasury of the king, because the king says anyone who does not pay the head tax will serve someone who does pay the head tax. See, before we're talking about property tax, so anyone who doesn't pay property tax, so then if someone else comes in and pays the property tax, then whoever pays can use the land. Here we're talking about head tax. So these people did not pay their own head tax for whatever reason. Okay, so you pay the head tax for them. Now they're yours. They're your servants for that year. And the king says so. And therefore, yes, it's permitted for these rabbis to work the people even as slaves, because the king said, everybody owes me tax. Everybody's my slave if they don't pay the tax. And I can transfer that right to enslave them to someone who does pay the tax on their behalf, and therefore that was permitted. Rav Seoram achud Rava hava takif inashe de la ma'alu me'ayelehu begoharka de Rava. Rav Seoram, the brother of Rava, if he saw some Jews who were not acting properly, la ma'alu, not acting in a high way, so he would grab them by force, ume'ayel, and force them to raise up the sedan chair of Rava. So Rav Sorami took care of his brother well. He'd grab Jews who were sinning or not acting properly and say, okay, you have to do this kind of slave labor to carry Rava on their shoulders in his palanquin. Amale Rava Shapir Ka'abad Detanina Raita Sheno Nohek Kashura Minain Shata Rashai Lishtabed Bo Tamudamad Lolam Bahem Ta'abodu Ub Achechem Yachol Afilu Nohek Kashura Tamudamad B'Achechem B'nei Israel Ish Be'achiv Ve'gomer. So Rava, the one who's being carried, says, this is a good thing that you do. Yes, it's proper. You're allowed to seize these Jews and make them work. How do you know? Because the Baraita says, if you see a Jew who's not acting properly, how do you know that you can grab him and force him to work like a slave? Because the pasuk says you should make them work, and also your brethren. The full pasuk, we have to see in context, says regarding non-Jewish slaves. If someone dies and the slave is inherited by the children, you work them forever. However, in contrast, ubachechem b'nei Israel, so the word ubachechem is linked to the next, right? The atnach is on ta'avodu, right? Comma, and your brother b'nei Israel ishbachiv lo tedebo b'farech. Do not work your brother with like slave labor. He should be just like a regular day laborer, but you don't give him type of slave labor. So if you take this atnach and you move it over one word, then it would read lo'olam bahem ta'avodu u'b'achechem. You should work non-Jewish slave and also your brethren. Well, what does that mean? When would you work a Jew like a slave? If they are not acting properly. So now, does that mean all the time? You can always do that, even if they're acting properly? That's the rest of the pasuk. So we take ubachechem, and now we put it in the proper syntax, that it goes with the next words, b'nei Israel. That's your brother. If he's acting like your brother, acting according to proper Jewish law and conduct, then you don't work him. But if he is not acting like a brother, then you can work him like a slave. Amar Rav Hama, Hayman de'ahiv zuzeh lechavre lemizban lehamra, ufsha velazabin lemishalem lekedeka azil aparvata dezol shefat. If someone hires an agent and says, here, take this money, take this $100, I want you to go and buy me some wine. And the agent doesn't do it. He just stays home and he doesn't buy him any wine. So then the agent is responsible to get him wine for the price that it's going at in the big market, which is at the port of Zol Shafat. And even if the price of the wine went up in the meantime, he has to pay, the agent has to pay out of his own pocket whatever, if he had gone and done his job properly and gotten wine when he was supposed to. So even and he didn't do it, and now the price went up, the agent has to pay the difference because he didn't do his job correctly. That's what Rav Chama said. Amar Memar, Amrita Lishmata Kamed Rav Zavid min Nehal De'ah. Memar says, I repeated this halacha to Rav Zavid in Nehal De'ah. Amar ki kamar Rav Chama hanemil b'yayin stam haba b'yayin zeh la miyamad mizabene le nihale. So Rav Zavid clarified that Rav Chama only said this halacha if the sender said, just buy wine. He didn't say what type of wine. Buy wine. And the agent didn't, then the agent will have to pay out of his own pocket the price of just regular wine, unspecified, that went up. However, if the sender said, I want this, I want Bartanura, this specific type of wine, and the agent doesn't do it, then the agent does not have to pay out of pocket. He can just return the money, because who knows if he would have been successful anyway. Could be that the agent would have gone to the market, and maybe that wine wouldn't be available, or the owner wouldn't sell it to him because he wanted to sell it to somebody else. The agent can always buy some kind of wine, unspecified, but a specific type of wine. Could be he wouldn't have been successful anyway, and therefore he just has to return the money and does not have to pay does not have to deliver wine or pay for the difference in price. Rav Asher Amar, afilu setam namela, my tamas machtahi, vasmachta la kanya. Rav Asher says, I disagree totally. Even if the sender said, buy wine, any wine, and the agent doesn't do it, the agent just has to give the money back and does not have to pay anything. Why? Because it's asmachta. This was a transaction with inconclusive consent. Although the agent said, yes, I'll do it for you, he did not fully accept that he has to do it, and if he doesn't, he's going to have to pay a fine. He was just saying, I'll take care of it, but he didn't fully mean it sincerely that he would take upon himself responsibility and consequences, and therefore, okay, he didn't do his job. You could yell at him, be angry at him, but he doesn't have to pay. We asked Rav Asher, how is it different from a Mishnah later on? That if I own land, and I ask you, I say, here, you're the sharecropper, and you have to work the land, and you have to pay me this much. And then the sharecropper, let's say the sharecropper doesn't do it, so the sharecropper says, and he writes this: if I let the field lie fallow and don't cultivate it, I will pay with the best quality land for your loss, because I'm the owner. And if the sharecropper does nothing, so now I'm losing out on a whole season that won't produce anything. So I can require the sharecropper to pay me that certain amount with the best quality produce. So what's the difference? How come when I ask an agent to buy me wine and he doesn't do it, he doesn't have to pay the difference? Whereas if I hire a sharecropper to work the land and he doesn't do it, he does have to pay. Why don't we say it's an asmachta? Why the sharecropper can say, I know I agreed to do it to work the land, but I didn't fully sincerely agree. I didn't want to accept a penalty over it, and therefore I don't have to pay. How do you explain this Mishnah, Rav Asher, according to your principle? And the answer is hatam yado biyado hacha la biyado. In the case of the land, this is in the sharecropper's power to work the land or not. No one is stopping him, right? He decided to be lazy and not do it, so he has to pay. So he's fully responsible. Whereas for the wine, it's not in his power. It could be that he would go to the marketplace and they wouldn't sell him wine. Maybe they already sold it. Maybe they had someone who bought it for a higher price and it's already gone. So since it's not fully in his hands to be able to accomplish, the agent is not going to fully take on himself responsibility with a penalty when it's possible that even if he tries, it might not work. It may fail through no fault of his own. So when he agrees, it's okay. He means I'll try. I'll do what I can, but I'm not going to be responsible. Whereas a sharecropper, since no one's stopping him, it's all totally up to him, he is fully responsible. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen v'amen.